wanted to read a book aloud to you. I'm a huge fan of read-alouds. And I read this book aloud yesterday to a 5th grade class in California. I was the mystery reader. And they all wrote me, the 5th graders, they all wrote me emails thanking me for the read aloud. And one of the things that a lot of the thank you emails said was, thank you for reading it in such an enthusiastic voice. When you changed your voice, I really could visualize who was talking, and I could really understand what was happening a lot better because you used your hands and you made the faces and you frowned and you changed your volume and you changed your speed, and that really helps. And that's really going to help me as a reader now by watching you do it. And that really struck me, that really hit me, that how, and I've been saying this for so long, how important it is for the read alouds to do that. So anyway, I really wanted to read the book to you. This is really for my friends that are teaching on Monday and Tuesday. So if that is you, and I know at least a dozen friends, teachers that are my friends, that are teaching next week, the Christmas week. And so I hope that this read aloud just brings a little bright spot to the remaining days you have before Christmas vacation. And the book I want to read to you today is called Santa Calls by William Joyce. He's one of my favorite authors because he uses great vocabulary words, uses really descriptive language. He's kind of funny. He has some puns in there, so it's a little bit punny. He's also the author that wrote, you probably heard of one of his other books. He wrote the book called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore. You've heard of that? Yeah. So he wrote that book. But if you also have read The Polar Express, then this would be a great book as a paired text with The Polar Express, because very similar plots, similar characters, similar sort of theme, I would say, maybe, or dilemma, but different. So not the same, but I'll let you try to figure some of those out. Okay. Santa Calls by William Joyce. Right. Art Atchison Ainsworth was a very singular boy. Orphaned at an early age by a gang of desperados, he had applied himself wholeheartedly to the making of inventions, the quest for adventure, and the fighting and smashing of crime. He lived in Abilene, Texas with his aunt and uncle, who ran a Wild West show, an animal phantasmagoria. He had a best friend, Spalding Littlefeets, a young Comanche brave, and he also had a little sister named Esther. If Art had one weakness, it was sweets and candy of any sort. If he had one flaw, it was that he was often mean to his sister Esther. But that was all before the amazing Christmas of 1908, before the extraordinary adventure, before the mysterious box arrived and changed young Art forever. They found the box outside their prairie laboratory one dusty December day before Christmas. No one knew how it had gotten there, and the only clue to its origins was a large SC stamped on one side. Holy mackerel, said Art. What a mystery. I suggest we examine it scientifically, said Spalding. And so, using the most scientific method at their disposal, they poked the box with a stick. A note instantly emerged, and it read, "Open the box, assemble the contents, and come north. Yours truly, SC. SC, they all wondered. By the rings of Saturn? Saturn, cried Art, examining the box with a magnifying glass of its own design. I've got it. Spalding stepped closer and whispered, You mean? Yes, said Art. It's from Santa Claus himself. Gee whiz, sighed Esther in awe. Santa calls. Inside their prairie laboratory, Art and Spalding set about opening the box. They poked and pried, pushed and shoved, but nothing worked. "I wish it would open," said Esther. The box rattled and then shook and then quaked and then opened. And they were thunderstruck. "It appears to be a flying machine," said Spalding. "To fly north in," said Art. "To see Santa," said Spalding. "But why?" wondered Art. Esther smiled but said nothing. For 3 days they worked feverishly. The basket they were to ride in was broken, so Spalding lent his beloved canoe to the cause. And by dawn on Christmas Eve, the Yuletide Flyer, as they christened the amazing machine, was ready to fly. I have to take the book jacket off because it's annoying. At first, Art refused to let Esther make the trip. "You're too little to come," he told her as he prepared to leave. I'll tell if you don't let me go," she threatened. Art gazed at her squarely and said, "You know an Ainsworth never tells." Esther watched solemnly as Spalding started the engine. A single tear trickled down her cheek. "Oh, all right, get in," Art relented. "You won't be sorry," she said, jumping aboard. "To the pole," shouted Art, and they lifted away undetected into the northern skies toward the icy unknown and Santa Claus himself. By afternoon, using a compass of his own design, Art piloted them to the North Ice Cap at the very top of the world. "I wonder why Santa has called for us," said Spalding as he reached for a blanket. "To solve an Arctic crime wave, I'd imagine," said Art as he popped a candy into his mouth. They all grew quiet. There, just ahead, was the North Pole, shining through the clouds. It was the most beautiful thing they'd ever seen. Their descent was graceful, but their landing was a catastrophe. The Yuletide Flyer spun wildly out of control, crashing into the very base of the Great Pole. "We appear to be up an Arctic creek without a paddle," said Spalding as he examined the wreckage of his beloved canoe. "We may be down, but we're not out," said Art, scanning the endless icy horizon with a spyglass of his own design. A man in a dogless sled sped toward them. "I am Ali Aku, captain of the Santarian Guard," he announced, jumping from the sled. "Step lively now. There's no time to waste. Darkness falls quickly here, and with it comes the dark elves and their evil queen." "What are dark elves?" called Spalding, climbing aboard. "Trouble," said Ali Aku evenly, and he gunned the sled across the frozen tundra. Within minutes, twilight was upon them, and with it an attacking army of dark elves led by their villainous queen. "Charge!" shouted Ali Aku as they flew forward. "Seize them!" screamed the Dark Queen. A barrage of snowballs filled the air. With ice spheres and slingshot, they scattered the elves like 9 pins. And little Esther, scored a direct hit on the Dark Queen herself. "Good shot," said Art. "Top notch. Absolutely bully," Esther smiled. It was the first nice thing that Art had said to her in over a month. "Straight ahead to Toyland," yelled Ali Aku, and at the flick of a switch, the dogless sled soared up into the sky. "You've not seen the last of me, little girl," screeched the villainous Dark Queen, but Esther hardly heard her, for the glowing lights of Toyland were now in sight. Toyland was everything they wished for, and more they ever dreamed possible. It was a vast, glorious, glittering city. Creatures of every continent and people from every land brought together for one purpose and one purpose only, pronounced Ali Aku: to make toys. But why has Santa sent for us? Said Art. I know not, replied Ali Aku as he steered them to the open square in the heart of the metropolis. A huge sign read, the best of the old, the best of the new, the best that is yet to be. The Toyland motto, said Ali, saluting proudly as they landed. Now we go to bed, said Ali. You must always go to bed before you see Santa. It's the rule. Suddenly, an extraordinary galloping bed pulled up. To Santa. And step on it, commanded Ali Aku, and the bed sprinted them through the shimmering streets. Did you hear that? The bed sprinted them through the shimmering streets. They were escorted by a troop of splendidly uniformed dogs. The canine brigade, remarked Ali. Santa's personal pets. To receive one is the highest honor in Toyland. By the moons of Jupiter, this is a swell place, said Art, and he wished more than anything in the world to someday have a pup from the canine brigade. Then, from the great hall of Santa, Mrs. Claus rushed out to welcome them. All of Toyland cheered. Why is everyone so happy to see us? Asked Spaulding as the bed came to a stop amidst the cheering crowd. Some secrets are better left unsolved, young man, said Mrs. Claus, and she smiled. We must bustle, she added as she hurried them on. Santa is waiting. Mrs. Claus led them into an enormous room. The crowd parted. Drums rolled. Ali Aku bowed. The room grew quiet. And there stood Santa. If there was ever a man about whom there was an unmistakable air of mirth and magic, it was this dashing, rotund fellow who stood before them now. He was every inch a Santa Claus. Spaulding, Art, and dear little Esther, he said gladly, you're just in time. He stepped down from the globe of good children and waved them closer. Shall we take a ride? Yes, cried Esther. The two boys could only nod. They were speechless. It's Christmas Eve. My sleigh is the order of the day. Santa snapped his fingers and the Christmas sleigh was brought forth. Santa hoisted the children aboard. Why in the name of Neptune did you call for us? Asked Art when he regained his voice. Santa chuckled. He smiled at Esther and put his hand on Art's shoulder. Some secrets are better left unsolved, Mr. Ainsworth. For now, just enjoy the ride. Santa cracked his whip, the sleigh took flight, and they shot out over Toyland. Trumpets blared, flags waved, thousands cheered, and above it all, Santa's voice rang loud and clear. Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, one and all. Merry Christmas. As they flew over the pole, ominous clouds appeared. A balloon, unlike the others, swerved into their path. Out of the way, bellowed Santa, but the sky grew thick with dark elves, ice, and snowballs. A cluster of dark elves swept aboard and plucked Esther from the sleigh. Esther! Shouted Art, reaching for her. The queen squealed with delight. Hee hee hee, to the castle, she cried, and they vanished into the clouds. Call out the guard and attack the queen's castle, commanded Santa. Esther must be saved. Wait, said Art urgingly, for he felt something he had never felt before. She's my sister, and I will save her. Do the elves have a weakness? Candy, replied Santa. Art's eyebrow shot up. Aha, he said. I have a new invention. Allie, Spaulding, I need your help. And so, under the cover of darkness, Art Spaulding and Ali Aku crept into the fearsome Esther. And so, under the cover of darkness, Art, Spalding, and Aliaku crept into the fearsome castle of the Dark Elves. They found Esther soon enough, held prisoner before a giant boiling cauldron. The whole army of Dark Elves stood chanting, "Gimme, gimme, 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 gimme." "It's the only word in their language," whispered Aliaku. "Unhand my sister, you Arctic ruffians," Art shouted, rushing forward and hurling a candy bomb of his own design. There was a loud explosion and smoke filled the room, and candy rained down as the Dark Elves scattered. Up the tower steps, Art and his stalwart band dashed with the Queen and her elves in hot pursuit. "I've still got one trick up my sleeve," panted Art. "What?" whispered Esther. "Licorice." Art replied as he quickly passed out supplies of the wretched black candy. No villain in the world can resist licorice. They held their ground and waited. The dark horde surged closer. "You can't escape me now," sneered the Queen. "Let 'em have it," shouted Art, and they let loose their bitter barrage. "Licorice," squealed the Queen helplessly. The Dark Elves clamored greedily for the candy. All was chaos, and then a great jovial laugh pierced the commotion. There, at the top of the stairs, they could just make out the silhouette of Santa, and behind them, the sleigh. "Well, just in the Saint Nick of time," said Art as he grabbed Esther's hand and helped her away. "Thanks for coming to get me," said Esther to her brother as they climbed aboard the sleigh. Art was quiet for a moment. "Well, Christmas wouldn't be the same without you, sis," he said, and he squeezed her hand. "Besides, you're too good of a shot to leave behind." Esther smiled, and Santa laughed. "Mr. Ainsworth," he said, "Merry Christmas to you," and he cracked his whip. "What's our first stop, Mrs. Claus?" "Abilene, Texas," she replied, and the sleigh took off. In no time, they were back in Texas and landing outside their prairie laboratory. Suddenly, Art, Esther, and Spalding were very sleepy. "What's happening?" asked Esther. "Oh, nothing to worry about," Mrs. Claus, as the children were carried quietly into the house. "Just a little Christmas magic," added Aliaku. As they were being tucked into bed, Santa asked, "Did you enjoy the ride, Mr. Ainsworth?" "Oh, very much," said Art, fighting to stay awake. "But why did you call for us?" Santa didn't answer. And then as Art drifted to sleep, he heard Santa say softly, "Good night, my fine, brave children. Merry Christmas dreams. And remember, some secrets are best left unsolved." The next morning, they awoke with a start. "Was it all a dream?" wondered Spalding. "I hope not," said Esther. "I'll bet the farm it wasn't," said Art, and rushed outside. By the prairie laboratory, in the very spot where they'd first found Santa's mysterious box, there sat a splendid new canoe for Spalding, with Yuletide Flyer 2 painted on its side. For Art, there was a handsome little puppy of the canine brigade with a bag of exquisite candy around its neck. And for Esther, there was only an envelope. "By my stars above," sang Art, picking up his pup and popping a candy in his mouth. "It's all true." "An amazing man, that Santa," said Spalding as he examined his canoe. Esther opened her envelope. Inside were 2 letters. She looked them over eagerly and then tucked them into her robe. She was grinning from ear to ear. "Is that all you got? You just got some letters?" asked Spalding. "Oh, it's much more than that," replied Esther. "Well, what do they say? What do they say, sis?" asked Art excitedly. Still grinning, she looked at Art squarely in the eye and said, "You know an Ainsworth never tells." Art thought a moment and then laughed out loud. "Right you are," he said. "Come on, let's play with the pup." And play they did. Happily, joyfully, till sunset and beyond, they rested under the evening sky. Eating Art's candy, Spalding wondered aloud. We still don't know why Santa called for us. Yep, said Art. But we did have a swell time, didn't we, Esther? Esther nodded. I guess it's like Santa said, some secrets are better left unsolved, Art offered. Maybe, Spalding agreed. Esther just smiled and they all laughed. Supper's ready, called Aunt Ainsworth from the kitchen porch. They ran inside to the warmth of their house, and they were happy, each one of them. They'd smashed a crime with a new invention. They'd had a great adventure, and Art and Esther were now at last friends. And on that Christmas day, all was right with the world. And look what we've got on the last page. We've got 2 letters. The first letter says, to Mr. Santa Claus, North Pole, from Esther Ainsworth. Dear Santa, you can send me toys if you like, but what I really wish for is for my brother Art to be my friend. Yours truly, Esther Ainsworth. And then you've got a letter here from Santa Claus addressed to Miss Esther on Ainsworth Ranch in Abilene, Texas. And it says, Dear Esther, such a rare and wonderful request could not be refused. I'm glad our little adventure did the trick. Santa Claus. Did you like it? So good, right? I've really, of all the books in the world, this one right here is one of my favorites because Christmas is a really special time in our house. Our kids are grown. We're all kids, but every single person in this house believes in Santa Claus. Every single person in this house believes in the magic of Christmas because if you believe, then you will receive. Merry Christmas, everyone.